Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Peya Perik Ches, Halacha Aleph and Halacha Beis. Halacha Aleph, the Samaches, we're going to learn Daf Samaches, Amud Aleph will be in Halacha Aleph, Samaches and Beis will be Halacha Beis. The Mishnah, in the beginning of this Perik, on Daf Samach, Zayin Amud Beis says that all people are allowed to take what was originally given for Matnas Aniyim. And the Mishnah says, when it comes to leket, from Mishayelchu Hanamoishois, as we interpret it when we learn the Mishnah, when the old people go by the field afterwards, even if something is left over, since all of the Aniyim, they despair, they have yush, they don't dream that there'll be anything left for them, and they abandon it, any person can take it. So by leket, the share was Mishayelchu Hanamoishois. By Peret and Oidelis, the Mishnah gave the shear, Mishayelchu Ha'aniyim, Bakedem, and V'yovoyu, when they go and come. In other words, when Aniyim went through the vineyard twice, when it comes to Oidelis, when it comes to olives, So there we had in the Mishnah Machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanakama gives a time of Reviyah Sheniya, that after, from when the second rainfall falls. Now, this is really in Masechta Tainis. We have different Tanoim. When is the second rainfall? The Tana Rabbi Yossi holds it's on the 23rd of Mar Cheshvan. This, of course, is in Eretz Yisrael. But whichever date it is from when the second rains fall in Eretz Yisrael, or from the time when they should fall, Aniyim will no longer think about going to get the olives. So then they abandon it. And the Tana Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah says, it's not about a time, but it's about how much olives are left. And if Aniyim go through the field and they can't even put together the value of 4 isars, and as we said, that's really the value of 2 meals for the ani, for him 2 meals a day, and for his wife 2 meals a day, then he will abandon, the Aniyim will abandon it. That is what we learned in the Mishnah. And we're going to be mamshech. The Gemara is going to give a little bit about the word nemoishois. We're going to quote a Tosefta that we actually spoke out in the beginning of this Masechta, and that is that if you have a field or a product, produce, that is of a type that is so inferior that Aniyim lechatchila never bother to collect it, not like in our Mishnah when you left Matnas Aniyim and they no longer will collect it, then it belongs to anyone, l'chol adam. It means it's hefker l'chol adam. If there is a product that milachatchila no Aniyim would bother to take it, that remains property of the balabas, not hefker l'chol adam. L'chatchila, it's not considered matnas aniyim, and this is actually the reason when we spoke out that nowadays people do not leave these matanos on the field because aniyim don't. That's the way of the world now. In the modern world, people are not going to go ahead and gather some ears in the field. People don't know what to do with that. So l'chatchila, it's not going to be matnas aniyim. Now, on Daf Samaches Amud Beis, we're going to start a new Mishnah. This new Mishnah is really a very important introduction to the next Masechta. Masechta is Demai. We had this also a lot in the Bavli, that towards the end of one Masechta, many times, there are already topics that are served as an introduction for the coming Masechta, and that is, what is the Mishnah based on? That from the times of Yechanan Kohen Gadol, Bizman Ba Yesheni, when he realized that in as much as everyone is always separating Truma Gedoyla, because people knew that if you have produce from which Truma Gedoyla was not separated, Tevel and people eat from it, God forbid, they'll be Chayiv Misa B'dei Shamayim. People understood the severity of it, and everyone was Mafresh Truma Gedoyla. But after they were Mafresh Truma Gedoyla, there was a substantial minority, a minority of people. But there was enough of a minority for the Chachamim of that time to make it Zera that if you buy produce from what we will call a Am Ha'aretz, you have to suspect that maybe he did not fully take off all of the remaining Maisris, and therefore it's called Demai and Midrabanan. They have to be separated with many details of what to do with it. It's not that you separate it and you give it right away, but we'll speak to details another time. But we have the concept called demai. So that's the rule. Produce from an Amaretz, there is a question mark on his or her ne'emanos, and therefore tithings, this is a general statement, should be separated, even though it could be that it was already separated before. Our Mishnah will give you two exceptions, and that will be that if you have an ani who's an Amaretz, during the time that those matnas aniyim are available in the field. So if an ani comes ahead and he's selling grain, and he's saying this is a leket, and as we learned throughout the whole Masechta, matnas aniyim is completely exempt from isos. The question is, could we trust the ani? The Mishnah says that an ani during the time of matnas aniyim is trusted, even if he's Amaretz, to say that this is matnas aniyim. And similarly, a Levi, this is Bechlal, not matnas aniyim. Ma'aser Rishon goes to a Levi. And by the way, matnas aniyim, we paskin, has no kedusha. A Levi can gift it to a Yisrael, he can sell it to a Yisrael. What happens if the Levi is a Am Ha'aretz? So our Mishnah holds that a Levi always has the manos. What will be the manos to say that Trumas Ma'aser was separated from his Ma'aser Rishon? And that is something that we're going to dive into as we unfold the sugya of Daf Tzamaches Amid Beis, just to share one more very important machloikis tanoim that we will have in today's daf. And this is also as an introduction to better appreciate the rule of Damai, even though what we said now was very correct, that from the times of Yechanan Kohen Gadol and Am Ha'aretz, however we define the Am Ha'aretz, doesn't have ne'emanus when it comes to Maisris. That is, if we are only relying on what he says. However, if we see the Am Ha'aretz, if we see him separate, let's go Ma'aser Rishon, we see him do that. And then he says, I also separated Ma'aser Sheni. L'kula Alma will believe him. Because Ma'aser Rishon is something that he has to give away. Ma'aser Sheni is something that he gets to keep. True, he has to eat it in Yerushalmi, but he does not incur any loss. If we see an Am Ha'aretz doing the step of giving away, for sure, we can have Nemanos that he did the other step, which is easier for him, which is the Ma'aser Sheni. However, what about in the reverse? What happens if we see Am Ha'aretz separating Ma'aser Sheni? We see him do that. Does he have Nemanos to say that he separated Ma'aser Rishon? That's a machloekes tanoim. In other words, the din of the Mai is when we saw him do nothing. We are only relying on what he's saying, so we have a chashash. But if we see him doing one step, so to go min hakal el hakaved, min hakaved el hakal, as we speak out more details, right, in one direction for sure, in the other direction we'll have a machloekes tanoim, and all of that will be very relevant to our sunnah. Okay. So Chevra Daf Samaches Amud Aleph. Mishnah Aleph, like we said, has this big rule that matnas aniyim at some point becomes hefker, and the Mishnah did not give the same shear for all of the products, which is something that this Gemara will explain. The first category of the Mishnah is leket, so we're speaking about a grain field, and we're dafka speaking about leket that is really scattered throughout the field. And the Mishnah says that mishayelchu hanamoishos, and we interpret it namoishos, the elderly people, that other aniyim know that if the person who's old, who walks slowly, who walks bent over, which means that they have the advantage when you walk slow of seeing every detail. So he found every shtickle leket. Now, is it possible that he overlooked one or two pieces? Absolutely, even if he overlooked a lot. All of the aniyim had huge. They're not going to go there to look anymore, and therefore it belongs to l'chalon. So first of all, the word, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Why are these elderly people called nom moishois? So Rabbi Yechanan says, because the word yomish, right, lo yomush, it means to remove. Like Yeshua never removed himself from the tent. Shehem bo'us basoif. In other words, they come when all the other collectors remove themselves. That's the pshat of Namush. Abba Shou had another text, not that he read the word Namoishes, but his text was Ma Shoishois. And not only is it from the Amoira Abba Shou, but indeed the Gemara says we find in various braises different nuschos. Is Tanoi Tonei, like we have in our Mishnah, the Nusach Namoishes. And Rabbi Yechanan explained that Namoish, Yamish, comes from the word removed. The East Hanoi Tonei Moshoishes. Abba Shaul has other braises to lean on. Man, the Amano Moishes, we explained what the word means. That was Rabbi Yechanan, Shein Boam Basoy. Now, man, the Amar Moshoishes, the Tanoim, and subsequently Abba Shaul, that sided with them, who have the girsa, that the word regarding the elderly are called Moshoishes. The word Moshoishes comes from the word Mamosh, right? Chush Hamishush, the ones that feel. So it's referring to the elderly themselves that have to feel their way across the field. In other words, elderly people, when they walk, you see how they walk? They lean on the wall, they lean on the table, they lean on the chair. They're like using their hands to help them walk. Okay. Rab Chuna b'shem Rab Menachem says that Rabbi Yochanan, l'chu'ura, the pshat in our Gemara was Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri was an ani. That he, when he would collect his matnas aniyim, he would go out with the elderly. And if you remember earlier in the Masechta, when we spoke about the obligation, 3 times a day for the owner to be present, for the aniyim to come in. The final time was for the no moishos. In other words, for them, I think the field was open mincha time because it took them a long time to get there. And now, the disadvantage is that l'chura, whoever got there first, got more. And if they're younger, they have more koyach to schlep. The advantage of coming late is because they walk slow. So quick and slow. You can even say this is Rabbi Nabi Yosef on some degree. So taka you go to yeshiva, how many dafim did you learn le'inyam? That's so even though he would go with the nomaishois, he would go with the elderly, and therefore you would think that they would have the least amount. Adarabah, or maybe Parnasasi shall call Ashana. He gathered a tremendous amount. Look inside the Pnei Moshe, teaches it this way. 3 lines from the top. That means that Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri, we're saying over here, was from an ani. And maybe Parnasasi shall call Ashana. And he would bring enough food for a whole year, meaning that they also would bring a lot. Okay, so not that they would bring more than the others, they would bring a lot. Now, why? What else is the Gemara trying to say with it? So the Pnei Moshe says, the shuv misya'ashim ha'aniyim. In other words, after the Nemoshes, let's go. I want to emphasize more is that dafka, because they walk so slow, they have to tap, they have to feel the way when they walk. They see every little piece, and they gather a lot. They gather so much that other aniyim will have yish of finding anything else. And even if that's the Pnei Moshe, even if there's something left over, mutar l'chol adam. Clearly, the Pnei Moshe is learning, like we spoke about yesterday, it works because of yish. Now comes a Tosefta, and here comes a huge chiddush. Our Mishnah is premised that when you leave matnas aniyim, it belongs to the poor. At the point where the poor have yish, then it belongs l'chol adam. Dafka, not to the balabas. Right, Mendel? We're not going to say that chatzei shel adam koinolay, just to make that clear. Which you could have argued. Well, if it becomes hefker, why isn't the owner? Why does he not? I don't know the answer to that. But it's l'chol adam. This Tosefta is saying a whole different word. It sounds alike, but it's a whole different word. That if the product on this field is so inferior, or like we spoke out on the intro, that we're living nowadays, touch on Pei Daled, aniyim are not going to go to fields to collect ears. They're going to go to a bakery and to ask Schwartz, who's generous, to give the leftovers. That, yeah. Lechatchila, it's not matnas aniyim. And then it goes to the balabais, not l'chol adam. Tani, we learned in the Braisa that matnas aniyim shabasada, that if it's a type of product, she'ein aniyim makpidem aleihen, that's different than yush. Yush means they would have wanted for the field to have more of it. Elama, they rationally concluded there's nothing left. So even when they were wrong, but they thought there's nothing left, so they had yush. Here is lachatchila, they're not makbid. They're not going to attempt to gather it. Look at this. Hadei ein shabal abayis. Not hadei ein l'chol adam. You got it? Look inside, let's say, the Rashirilio at the end of the right column. Hadei ein shabal abayis, like 4 lines before the bottom. Even if the owner is an usher, fafilu, koydam azman, and even before the Mishayel Chohan Moishes, even before Mishayel Chaniyim Bakerim Uboyim, No, this is even before the shirim of the Mishnah. The Tama, Kidamase, Taze V'Isam. When the Torah says regarding Matnas Aniyim, leave it to them, who is to the them, Lagen Layasam V'Lalmana. Leave it for the poor. A product that the poor never bothered to collect. So what would happen if you were to leave it? The Oirvin would collect it. The ravens would collect it. Ha'atalefim are bats, right? Yeah. Right, one of the 24 birds the Torah enumerates that are not kosher. So for that, it's not matnas aniyim, and therefore it never left the domain of the balabas. Beautiful. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Bun Barchia. In other words, you're telling me not that the balabas did not leave it; he left it. It's a product that he left. How can he keep it? He left it for them. Can you leave something for the ani and reacquire it? So the Gemara is going to clarify that it's not that he left it for the aniyim, and since the aniyim don't want to gather it, it goes to the balabas. If it would have been left halachically for the aniyim, if the aniyim don't collect it, it would go l'chol adam. The pshat is that he never left it for the aniyim, halachic. That's why Chobalabai is. This is what we quoted just under Rashi. Meaning, so any product that if you will leave it, the anim, no anim will ever pick it up. So if you would leave it, what would happen? The natural scavengers would pick it up. That milichatchila is not matnas anim. So even though you called it payah, or even if you called it leket, it doesn't mean anything. You didn't halachically leave anything because you didn't have to, and therefore it not shot, it left your domain, and you reacquire it, melechatchila, like the Braisa says, Hare and Shabal Abayis. That's the way we learn the Gemara. Right there in the Gemara. Now, what we have to explain, and we asked the question quickly when we learned the Mishnah yesterday, why didn't the Mishnah give the same shear of Mishiyelchu HaNamoshos to all of the types of produce that the Mishnah spoke about? The Mishnah began with leket, then it spoke about peret and relevus and a kedem. There the Mishnah gave another shear, Mishiyelchu v'yovayu anim, and then the Mishnah spoke about olive trees. Like, why does each one, why not all the same? It makes sense that all of these matanas are open 3 times, all of them. And the last ones by mincha are the elderly people. It makes sense to say that when people who walk slow go through the field, and the obvious low-hanging fruit were taken by the youngsters, they're going to make a thorough bidikas chametz over there. So it makes sense. Afterwards, it should be the same shit. The peretu boy leilos says the Mishnah, Mishiel chanim ba'kerem v'yavay. Frek the Gemara beloy tanin the moishois. Why not learn the moishois? Answers the Gemara. Now al yidei shehem chaviv. Grapes are more valuable, or people find them more valuable than leket, than grain. Hein boyen al asar. The way the Marafulda learns, this is very important, that the nomoishois come at mincha, like we said. That which has more value, the elderly people come early. It's normally you have the shit of the nomoishois. When the nomoishois come, no one else is there. By a kedem, everyone, the first time they open up the field is when everyone comes. Now, we don't say after the first time, but we say twice. Now, this Mishiyel Chanim B'Kerem V'Yavayu could be during the same time. It can be early in the morning. It can be noontime. It can be the same time they went back and forth. Or they opened it once, Aniyim went, only one direction, and they went away. And then the other time they went into the other direction. But there isn't an Amoishas. That's the Gemara. By Yakedem, no one would wait for the third time. So you can't even give it as a share. Now, you want to speak about the Nomoishas would come with the youngsters. So you can't call it Mishiva Yohan Nomoishas, which could have been misunderstood by Mincha. Okay. Azoi learned the Maraful. He brings other Pirushim, but then he goes back to Fedish Tatsab. That the Zakanim come al Asar, which means they come early. Right. V'zeisim, the final category the Mishnah spoke about, and here we had a machlokes Tanoim. So the Tanakama holds Mishetera Trivia Shania. has to do with the Zman, which is very unique. It has nothing to do with the Aniyim de facto came. It has to do with once it's already the second rain season, no one is going to come pick olives. Again, why don't we say answers the Gemara? Because since olives are gathered during the winter, during this time of the rain season, older people never collect olives. Okay. Now, you can still ask, okay, so why don't we say Misha Yetsu v'Yovayu, Misha Yelchu v'Yovayu? Huh? No. Chashuv is only a reason why the Moishes did not come in Mincha. But until now, we were learning, it has to do with when other Aniyim find out that it was so thoroughly looked at. So whoever went there got everything. There's nothing left. It's like after there's a huge fundraiser, you don't go to the same people with another huge fundraiser. There's no money left. You understand? But we don't say that. It's the Gemara is not explaining why are we using a time. We never had a time before. We had a certain amount of aniyim going through the field. The Gemara is only explaining why we don't say no moishes. I don't have an answer. I'm just pointing out that the Gemara is not explaining why. The Gemara just wants to know why not no moishes. Now, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, that no, it's not about the Revia Sheniya. Rabbi Yehuda is saying what I mentioned. In other words, it has to do with there is when an ani goes there and he realizes that there's so little olives that I won't even be able to put together 4 meals or 4 isses. That's it. No one will go there anymore. The koydem lochein frekt, it says the Gemara einoi asur mishum gazel. Okay. Says let's go with the Amara Fulda. It's like a middle of the Amid. The koydem lochein ein asur mishum gazel. So the Amara Fulda understands that this is a kasha on Rabbi Yehuda. Ad Rabbi Yehuda part. The mashma lo oil lo mazlinon basar hayshir the ha'ani yoytzei. Meaning Rabbi Yehuda is telling the Tanakame, even if that happened before the Revia Sheniya, even if it happened before that, v'chi koydem lachein einoi asur mishum gezel, shaharei koydem Revia ha'ani lo oilom yoytza, dilma yimasku. When an ani doesn't know how much is left, see, that's a problem. He doesn't know that. He will go out there because he hopes to find a lot. Now, what happens if he goes to the field? He's there. What? You think if he gathers 3 isers worth, he's not going to keep it? He's not going to want it? It's his. So, Aniyim, when they watch the Nemoshos go, that'll be understood, Mendel. No one else will go. That's called Yush. Here, you don't know who else went there. He's saying that if what he gathered is less than 4, then it's l'chaladim. No, then it's gezel. If the ani took it, it's gezel. So answers the Gemara. Now we're going to go with the girsa that we have over here in the brackets. Bishitason heishivu, meaning that loy atem. What I'm saying does not fit with your approach. Sha'atem oimrim b'pnei shehitzina einom yoytzam elam bachrim. Now, God, this is very important, these 2 gersois. Look inside the Pnei Moshe, which is, we're going to follow only one way of learning this Gemara. Why didn't you say no Moshes? Why didn't you say no Moshes? Because elderly people b'chal don't go. So Rabbi Yehuda, am saying that you who accept the concept that once people don't go anymore, it becomes hefker. So you have to use, that's the whole kasha that we spoke out. What's the Revia Sheniya? Revia Sheniya has nothing to do with it. It has to do with a time where people will presume that they're not going to find that amount. Afu eina yoytzim. If the ani will presume that there isn't that amount left, he's lachatchila not going to go. So you don't say no moishes. You said Revia Sheniya because you link it on if people are not going, that in itself means they abandon it. Narvos then Bachrim go. When won't Bachrim go? You say that Bachrim won't go by the Via Shania. I get the concept. Your concept is that when Aniyim won't go anymore, it becomes Yush. The only way to determine whether they will or will not go is what they will presume. People, like I gave an example yesterday, people, the Mishalachim, don't come here because they presume that since there's only one standing shul here, le'esata, you don't have 10 like you have on Piku, so they presume that it won't be worth it for them. So lechatchila, they don't go. That is what makes it into Yush. Of course, if they went and they gathered, then it's Gezel to take it from them because they acquired it. But the Reviya Shniya doesn't make sense. And for that, and there's no answer on the Tanakh, like it's hard to understand what's the Reviya Shniya. It should not be connected to a time. It should be connected with the presumption of Aniyim, whether they're going to be Matzliach in getting enough to make their time worthwhile or not. Okay. Atkan, the halacha aleph for good. Turning to Samachas on the base. Again, this is the big Hadama to the next Masechta, and we're almost there to Masechta's Gemai. There's a topic that I'm going to actually leave for tomorrow, and that is more, how does one define the Am Ha'aretz? And let's just use the word Ha'am Ha'aretz in a very superficial way. The Am Ha'aretz is a person that is found not so knowledgeable and therefore lacks, in our context, in the dinim of Maisris. They all understood the severity of Truma Gedoyla. There was never a chashash that he won't remove Truma Gedoyla, but there was a chashash that they did not remove Meiser Rishon and Meiser Sheni, or Meiser Rishon and Meiser Ani, and therefore Midrabanan, people who buy produce from Ha'am Ha'aretz or they receive a gift from Ha'am Ha'aretz have to suspect what is it, and they have to take certain steps. We're going to use the words they have to tithe it, but we're not referring to Truma Gedoyla. We're going to discuss soon about Trumas Meiser today. Even that which they separate, like the Meiser Isha, they actually don't have to give it to the Levi, because there are two dinim. There is the din of Meiseris, Isur Veheter. For that, we're chayish to the miuta, which were substantial, separated. But then there is a din of mamanis. And that is, like we spoke out, unlike Truma that has Kedusha, Meiser Isha, even though it's subject to a machlokes Tanoim, we follow the Tanoim who hold that Meiser Isha has no intrinsic Kedusha, which means once it's given to a Levi, it's choil property, and anyone can eat it. And we also have to put into effect when it comes to dinim mamanis, so if I separate Meiser Isha, I resolve the Tevel issue, but I don't have to give it to the Levi actually because of Amoitzi Mechaber Alai. And that detail we're not going to learn right now. But generally, Am Ha'aretz is not Nema. And our Mishnah is going to give the two exceptions. And that will be, if you have a Ani who is Am Ha'aretz, there'll be certain times that he will be Neman to say that the produce that he has was from Matnas Aniyim. Matnas Aniyim is completely exempt from all Trumas Umaisis. So the person who buys it off the Ani or who receives a gift has no issue with the Mai. And the same thing with the Levi. Levi, Am Ha'aretz, as we'll see, Ani, and Ani, Am Ha'aretz, during the years in which you separate Meiser Ani instead of Meiser Sheni, will always be never to say that it's Meiser Ani. That will be the Mishnah. Let's read it inside. It says the Mishnah, Nemanim, which means a poor person, which one, even the Am Ha'aretz, is always believed to say, Al Haleket, Al Hashikha, Al Hapeya. He's believed to say that the produce that I have is from the Matnas Aniyim. But when is he believed? Only Bisha'atan. Only when it's the time of harvest. In other words, since this same product right now is available for Aniyim, so that Raglaim Ladavar, right? Now, could it be that that the time of harvest was a month ago, and the Ani saved up from a month ago? Of course it's possible, but he doesn't have the manas anymore. Don't forget, the Ani is claiming, if he were to claim that he separated Maisvis, is it possible? Of course it's possible. We don't believe it. But during the time, the Shatan, then he's Neman that it's from the Matnas Aniyim, even though that implies, that will mean that the recipient from this Am Ha'aretz doesn't have to follow the normal din of the Mai. And similarly, the second exception will be from an ani, ama'aretz, bal ma'aser ani, b'chol shenasai. Because unlike the matonis that we learned in this Masechta that we keep on emphasizing, the mitzvah is lahaniach peya, and as we learned so many times that the owner doesn't have the right to choose to what ani to give it to, so it's left in the field, which means that are these matonis available only during the time of the harvest? Because then the aniyim go, right, it's called the alam gavad. All of the poor people are going to go gather it. Ma'aser ani is very different. Ma'aser ani, like ma'aser rishon, like truma, the owner cannot keep it, but the owner gets to choose to which ani to give it to. And the owner doesn't have to give it right away, and he didn't give it right away. He would separate it right away. The Zman Habir would be Erev Pesach or the 6th day of Pesach on the 4th year and on the 7th year. That's when he has to make sure it goes to the recipient. So there's two different things. They're separating the Ma'aser Ani, and then there's the distribution. When would the owner distribute it? He would choose to whom, and he would give it accordingly. So let's say this balabas has one ani to whom he gives the Ma'aser Ani to. Let's say he has a ton of Ma'aser Ani. He's not going to give it to him right away. Every month he'll give him a little bit. In other words, the same logic that an ani, the shaton, is believed that it's matnas aniyim, like a chikhopeya, right, or kerem, or peret and oilis b'chulei. The same logic will apply to anything that he is saying is from Ma'aser Ani during the whole year. During all of the 6 years of the 7 years. I'm sorry, during the 3rd year and the 6th year. During the 3rd year and the 6th year. And you can ask, I'm just thinking out loud, that since Mana Bir is on the 4th and on the 7th, why only during the 3rd year and the 6th year? Bakasha. Okay, but that's what the Mishnah is saying. B'chol shenasei means in its year. In its year, not all the 6 years. On the 3rd year and on the 6th year, okay, befedish. That's what the Marav Fulda says. Now,
can't mean during the entire time.
I'm not saying it can't mean. Let's go with the Marav Fulda. Take a look. And we're learning this. Chol shenasei here the Rashirilio, the oldest, right? B'chol shenasei neman all of the hainu shana shlishis v'shishis. Shemaiser ani noig ba. Okay. Now, Uben Levi, let's go to the Levi. Neman le'oilam. What's le'oilam? A Levi, guys, even though the Torah says that the Levium were not given land, they can own a lot of land. And if they grow produce, if the Levi grows produce, he's chayiv to separate all of the tithings like anyone else. And if the Levi is an Amoritz, if someone will purchase that which was grown by the Levi, the buyer, the Chaved, is bound by the dinam of the Mai, like buying produce from Amoritz. But what happens if the Levi is gifting produce or selling produce and he's saying, I did not grow it, I received this as my sedition. Now, truth be told, what must be separate from my sedition? Ma'aser min ha'ma'aser. Ma'aser min ha'ma'aser is like Truma Gedolah. Ma'aser min ha'ma'aser has to go to the kohen. Ma'aser min ha'ma'aser has to go. So just like even the Amoritz is neman regarding Truma Gedolah. So similarly, if you're now, there's a chiddush here. The chiddush here is that let's say this Levi, the Amoritz, also has a field. When he's selling to me produce, how do I know that he's selling me produce that he received as my sedition? Maybe he's selling me produce that he grew. But that's the chiddush. We believe him. As long as he says he's neman to say that it's not my backyard grown produce, it's my sedition. The moment he says my sedition, for that he has nemanis, and now I don't have to be concerned with ma'aser min ha'ma'aser. So the Mishnah actually gives these 3 exceptions. The ani only during the time of the harvest. To say matnas aniyim, even though could be the ani bought it off the street, could be the ani got a gift from Ha'amoritz himself. We don't know, but we believe him. And once we believe him, it's exempt completely. There's no din demai. You have the ani during the 3rd and 6th year if he says it's from Ma'aser ani, and then you have the Levi, who's even if he's an Ha'amoritz, if he says this is my sedition, which could be sold, that's where he passes. There's no kedusha there. Weiter, he has the money, so we're not concerned about the money. Says the Mishnah, the einam nemanim ella al davar shekein derech bnei adam lihi oisnahagen kein. In other words, we're going to see more details about it. the produce has to be consistent with the common practice. Like I just mentioned, each one has a chiddush. What's the chiddush? Maybe it doesn't come from matnas aniyim. Maybe it doesn't come from ma'aser ani. Maybe it's not ma'aser rishon. So there was some common minig that his story has to fit. And if the story doesn't fit, we'll leave that for tomorrow. Then you can argue if he has no namanus, so he has no namanus. It has to fit with the narrative. It's like matnas aniyim during the time of the harvest. Maybe after the harvest it's matnas aniyim. But like we said, the ma'aser ani can get the ma'aser ani. He could get it on the fifth year. He could get it. The guy left it on the third year, and he's distributing it. I'm sorry, he can get it on the fourth year before Pesach. But these things are shayif. No, it has to be on that year. That will be, I think, the end of the mission. There was some other common minig that has to back up the narrative of this Ama'aretz.
In the case of the lady with the Ma'aser,
yeah,
it's not. So the mission is telling us it doesn't matter whether he owns his own land or not.
That's a chiddush. Even though
if you knew he didn't own land,
that is no chiddush.
That would be.
Well, I wouldn't say that, because even if he doesn't own land, maybe the Levi bought produce from Amaretz and he's reselling it. You don't know where it came from. Once you begin, there's no nemanos. That's the problem in this world.
There's another factor of whether he's an Amaretz himself.
That's what I'm saying.
Right?
Yeah. In other words, when you say a person who's selling produce, Amaretz is telling you, I separated all the mices. What's the normal case of the mice? I don't care if he grew it or if he bought it. He's saying, I know all of the mices were removed. Say the Chachamim. We believe him from Truma Gedola. We don't believe him from Ma'aser Rishon or Ma'aser Sheni or Ma'aser. We don't believe him.
So this chiddush of the Levi is actually specifically a Levi Amaretz.
Yeah. All of the Mishnahs about an Ani Yosef. The Ani is a chaver. There's no chiddush. The chiddush is that even though he has no namanos, he has namanos. Do you trust your client? He will pay you. Well, you made the sale, but you don't trust him that much. You took a check, huh? Here you go. No, that's life. Life is that we trust, but we don't. The struggle of trust is a very deep, universal struggle. Okay. Now, you wanted to say something?
Truman's Meister is 10%.
It's 10%. Now, let's go back to the first case of the Mishnah. When the Mishnah says, this is so important, that the Ani who's claiming it's from the Matnas Aniyim, it's only B'Shaton. Now, it's not enough for it to be B'Shaton. B'Shaton means during the time of the harvest. What else do we need? We need for this Ani to live in proximity of fields that have Matnas Aniyim. What does close proximity mean? When we spoke about that Leket Shikompeh has left La'aniya Oisro'ir. Really, it's left for all the Aniyim. The fact is that I'm not going to go to the other city because I know by the time I get there, there'll be nothing left for me, because it's called the Alam Gavad. It's the who first come, first serve. So it's also about you have to leave. It's not just during the time of the harvest. Where does the Ani live? That's the Gemara's Kasha. Ad Eichon. Answers the Gemara. Ad Nokem Shadar Kelelech Olavi Bay Bayoim. This is very important. The Ani, the Amaretz, who's trying to sell to you this, and he's telling you, I got this from Matnas Aniyim. He must live in proximity of a field that now has available for the poor Matnas Aniyim. How close? That on the same day he can go collect and come back. If it's further than that, is it possible? It's possible. There isn't enough circumstantial evidence to back up his claim when there is a question mark on his trustworthiness. Okay. No, that's a good word. Like, if something is close enough to go and come on the same day, it's like for us who live in LA, the oil is a place that you can go and come on the same day. It's close. It makes it not that everyone does it that way, but you could. That's that close. If you have to already overnight, that's already a trip. Psychological. Now, Maisa says the Gemara to him and Rabbi Lachamisha Achim. There were 5 brothers. They were Nebachol Amaratzim. And each one brought an entire coin of wheat. Rabbi, who was wealthy, Rabbi bought it to all of them. And Rabbi asked them, Rabbi wanted to know whether he is going to be bound by Demai. They told him during the time of the harvest, no, that we collected it from Leket Shikompeh. And Rabbi believed them. The point is that it's a stretch. Why is it a stretch? Because a coin is a large amount. And the moment there isn't enough circumstantial evidence, we have to be chayish that maybe it's not from Matnas Aniyim, and they don't have namanas regarding whatever has to be retired. So if the Gemara is asking, is it even possible? Can now I know that it's not that all the 5 got it from the same field, but it sounds like each one is claiming they got a card from one field. One field to leave matnas aniyah makoir is too much. So the Gemara says no. The Efsha Kain answers the Gemara Ella mikot sivchad umikot sivchad. That the aniyim never claimed they got it from one field, but they put it together. And what happened was koira salak. When they went through all of the fields today, it's shaykh for an ani on whatever in a very short amount of time to gather an amount of a coin. Okay.
Didn't we there before we had an agree? We said that they would move the
a lot.
delicious, that it was sustenance for the entire year. Right? You get a year's worth of produce.
Then he's making a very good point. Yeah.
I don't know.
Very good point. Very good point. You have to know how much he ate. You have to know if he was married.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, listen, Rabbi was so wealthy, he had all these probably tons of fields.
Oh, Rabbi was wealthy, correct.
So if they're
coming to
Rabbi
Rabbi's,
believe that, you probably believe that they took it from his field.
And that's a bit even better. I really love what you said. Well, since Rebbe was so wealthy, and in Rebbe's fields there was so much matnas aniyim, so the guy who's kvetching that I'm leaving so much for the aniyim will believe an ani who says I got a whole coin. He says, yeah, you got it from my field. All right. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Lazar, the Imam wondered. Okay. Wonders. Very good. One thing to say about that. Here's a kasha. Okay, we got it. On the 3rd and the 6th year, we're going to go with that. Even the Ama'aretz, the ani, can claim I got it as Meiser ani. What is my problem? My problem is that if he bought it or if he got it, he received it. Let me believe him. Who did he receive it from? The Mishnah is not saying he at least has to say he received it from a chaver. He doesn't. I'm not talking about whether we believe him or not. He doesn't even have to say that. Which means it doesn't matter from who he received Meiser Ani. Now that we believe it's Meiser Ani, you're good to go. I have a simple question. Maybe the owner that gave him the Meiser Ani prior to giving him Meiser Ani, did not separate Meiser Isha. Truma Gedoyla were never chayish. What's the Mai? From the Mai, you have to separate Meiser Isha and Meiser Ani. So this guy is claiming, this Ani, Amaretz is saying, on the 3rd year, I got this as Meiser Ani. We believe him. So what? You got it as Meiser Ani. But what happens if the guy who gave it to you, the giver, did not separate Meiser Ishin, which is the Chashash and all the Amanatza?
Why would he do one, not the other?
Oh, so now the question is, do we say that since he separated Meiser Ani, that proves that he separated Meiser Rishon? Do we say that? Now, like we spoken in the intro, that is a topic that we have in Tanoim regarding Meiser Rishon, Meiser Shem. Now, says the Gemara, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Yossi, our Mishnah probably can only follow Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer is the one that says that if a person is seen to take Sheni, don't forget, Sheni is easier to separate because Sheni, even though you're bound by eating it only in Yerushalmi, you're not incurring a loss. It's yours. Still, Rabbi Eliezer says that if you saw an Ama'aretz separate Sheni, you can already believe that he separated Rishon because he's doing Meises. The Chachamim say the other way around only. Guys, remember this. The Chachamim are moide that if you see a Ama'aretz separating Meiser Rishon, then he says, I separated Meiser Sheni, you believe. Because you say, if the guy separated that which he has to give away, Avada, he separated that which he gets to keep. Everyone agrees to that. But when it comes to going in the other direction, Machloikes Tanoim. Now let me go to Meiser Rishon, Meiser Ani. Meiser Rishon, Meiser Ani, both of them, he incurs a loss. He has to give it away. So Rabbi Lazar, who says that even if he only separated Meiser Sheni, we believe that he separated Meiser Rishon, that will answer my question. How do you know that Meiser Rishon was separated? From the very fact that there's Meiser Ani. That means the owner gave Meiser Ani. Is a raya that he gave he's someone who cares about Meisers. So according to Rabbi Lazar, it works. But maybe our Mishnah will not work according to the Chachamim. Maybe according to the Chachamim, even though we taka believe the Ama'aretz, the Ani, we believe him that he got it as Meiser Ani. I believe you. So what? Maybe the guy that gave it didn't give Meiser Rishon. So I have to separate Meiser Rishon. Will the Chachamim hold to that? So maybe our Mishnah is only according to Rabbi Lazar. Says the Gemara, no. Amar Rabbi Yossi, our Mishnah follows everyone. Even the Chachamim will be moide by the very fact that this guy has Ma'aser Ani, which means the owner gave Ma'aser Ani. I know that the owner gave Ma'aser Rishon. Tell you why. When people sin, they were lax. They knew you have to separate Ma'asers. See, there's a big difference with me sinning for me versus me sinning for you. No, in Babli, the lashon is ein adam chayte v'lo eloi. The guy is sinning; he's sinning for himself. For someone to sin, for someone to do something wrong, for someone else to be, that's a whole different madrega. That's called chayte machti sarabam. We're not chayish. That means that this guy would give to the ani something that was not ma'aser rishon. He's making the ani eat tevel. No one would do that. She'ein adam oise bidvar aveira. That's the way we're going to learn. And I know I wanted to go further, but we're going to stop over here.
Why would that tell?
Yeah.
That's called tell?
Sure, not to Misa B'dei Shemayim, but it's on type process. No, it's when I'm Chayish and I'm a Aretz. If one second, I want to say when I'm a Aretz is selling Maisnes, he's also we're Chayish that he didn't separate anything. I get that, but the big difference there, he wants money. He's selling it, or even if he's gifting it, you understand? He's getting something from it. Here, he gave Ma'aser Ani. The Ani is going to eat it. He's doing. It's like doing a half a. No one does that. It makes a lot of sense. When you're going out of pocket to give Ma'aser Ani, you're not going to do it if you didn't first give Ma'aser Rishon, because then you'll be causing the Ani to sin. No one is a suspect for that. Now, is a Ma'aret suspect of selling produce that wasn't properly tied? Yes, the other person will sin, but he's benefiting that. If I coif this, and even if he's giving a gift, he's getting the hanav. I gave a gift. Here he's Pashat giving tzedakah. Here he's giving Ma'aser Ani. He wouldn't do it if he wouldn't have a prior taken Ma'aser Rishon. To be continued.
It sounds similar to the rationale of Rabbi Eliezer.
No.
If a guy gave Ma'aser Ani, you believe that he gave Ma'aser Rishon also, because he's already given Ma'aser. Is that what we said? Why would you do a half?
Because this Hamaretz, the chashash is that for money he's going to cut the corners. So even though the guy gave Ma'aser Sheni, which really he's keeping, the Chachamim say, I don't know if he separated Ma'aser Rishon. Maybe he's going to eat it without it. Maybe he's going to sell it. So I have to be chayish.
Right.
Here it's different. Here he's giving a gift to an ani.
That's what I'm saying. Ma'aser Sheni, the whole argument makes sense, I think, because that whole idea of him keeping it from